completely vegan, but it's engineered to replicate the taste and texture of beef.
In this episode, South Park tackles the ever-changing landscape of society, where red meat is villainized and plant-based patties are crowned the new heroes. But why? Is a plant-based diet actually much better for your health? Better from the ethical standpoint? Or better for the environment? Or is it mainly corporate profit-driven propaganda that wants you to believe that? It's an episode that leaves us questioning whether we should be munching on lab-made goo or just ordering a side of red meat heart disease. So is there actually any truth to the vegan options being the better choice for your health? Or is Cartman spot on about it all being processed garbage? We'll find out. As the episode kicks off, we find the school cafeteria buzzing with excitement for Sloppy Joe Day, until Cartman realizes he's not getting a Sloppy Joe today.
What is this?
Nope, it's fish. Now, just like in real life, vegan foods get these terrible names. Like how Gardein calls its fish fillets, fish fillets. Beef is called beef, and sausage is called Sasuke. So, why do these plant-based meat-producing companies do this? In some places, there's legislation to legally bar using words related to animal products in products that don't contain them. Do they have to try to be funny otherwise no one would eat their products? I don't know. The lunch lady explains to Cartman that there were some kids complaining about the cafeteria food not being healthy or sustainable enough.
What kids were complaining about health and sustainability? What kids would care at all? The girls!
Much to the surprise of Eric, Cartman has had enough of it and decides to have a word with the girls that introduce the idea of the sustainable vegan meat that is now being served. To which Wendy replies,
"We ask for healthier options and to sometimes have food for those of us who don't eat red meat."
Is red meat unhealthy? The reality is pretty complex. Sure, health studies link excessive red meat consumption to various health issues, but demonizing it completely is like saying all ice cream is bad because one guy got diabetes. So is the alternative any better? I'll get on that later. Let's focus on the red meat thing first. Eating excessive amounts of anything will not be good for your health. Period. Red meat is still a product of nature. The usual argument about red meat being bad is because of saturated fats, which red meat contains a lot of. While the body needs fats, too much saturated fat can lead to an increased risk of heart disease and stroke. Besides that, nowadays they contain a lot of preservatives, such as nitrates and nitrites, which increase the risk of cancer, which is a fair point. But red meat also offers a good source of protein, heme iron, zinc, and vitamin B12. The last of which is important, as people are now compensating for the lack of B12 intake by taking supplements. Now, I don't know about you, but I prefer my essential vitamins to come from natural sources rather than industrial production, which also has its problems. These industries are very unregulated, and the supplement bottles do not often contain what they are advertised to contain. Unlike prescription drugs and over-the-counter medications, dietary supplements are not approved by the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, for safety and efficacy. And while that puts limits on how oral vitamins, minerals, and herbals can be marketed, almost all still claim to have some salubrious effects. Hence the curious disclaimer on their packaging. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases. Then there is the issue of bioavailability. There are also lots of studies on this. Nutrients and supplements don't always come in a form your body can absorb, which makes them functionally useless. To put this into context, less than 10% of the vitamins in traditional tablets or capsules are absorbed by the body. It's why some vegans eat eggs and seafoods. They have more bioavailable nutrients. Now let's get back to South Park, where everyone is just eagerly quick to abandon meat because it's been labeled bad. Then change gives Eric a heart attack. Luckily, he's put in an ambulance and revived just in time to flip the bird to Wendy.
We got him back!
You, Wendy?
Now that Cartman has had a rude awakening, let's take a detour to the world of plant-based alternatives.
What's an impossible burger?
It's a plant-based burger, sir.
Randy's innocent curiosity quickly turns into a reality check, as the server explains to him that it's a plant-based burger.
Plant-based? You mean like it's not like a cow?
It's far from a cow.
It's completely vegan, but it's engineered to replicate the taste and texture of beef.
Ah yes, engineered to taste like beef, because who doesn't want their food to be a science project? But when Randy takes that first bite, his excitement quickly crumbles.
Hey, this tastes like shit. You guys make money off of this?
The server then explains that people buy and eat it because they really care about sustainability and the environment. It is the epitome of modern eating. Randy's experience serves as a scathing commentary on the plant-based food craze. So, is the push for sustainability worth sacrificing flavor? In the end, it seems consumers are trading a good old juicy burger for something that was created in a lab. And while the environment may benefit, our taste buds? Some do, some don't. It's a personal preference. Now, I know I've been following South Park's narrative and calling the plant-based alternatives trash, garbage, and foul tasting, but there are a lot of pros to them. And I actually do like the taste of most of them now. When the first plant-based alternative came out, I really wasn't impressed, but I still gave it a shot. Nowadays, there are some surprisingly good beef and chicken replicas out there. There's only one downside to them for me, and that's the production process of these so-called sustainable foods. I really just prefer organic food. Why? Because it's as close to nature as you can get. Nowadays, companies are very profit-driven, so they put a lot of preservatives into all that meat you can buy in the grocery stores. That way, it stays consumable for a longer period. It doesn't matter much if it's real red meat or a plant-based alternative. There's always some processing involved, which is inherently linked to health complications. Anyways, back to South Park. After choking down a mouthful of what Randy would describe as seasoned cardboard, he has a revelation. He realizes that if people are willing to pay for something that tastes like dog shit because it's plant-based, then there's money to be made. And thus, the genius pivot. He's ditching mulch to get in on the plant-based gold rush. Randy is ready to save his failing farm by hopping into the goo train. And what's the plan?
I've made a sustainable, healthy alternative to meat.
All the buzzwords you need to convince people they're eating something healthier. But let's be honest, Randy doesn't care if it's sustainable. He only cares if it's profitable. It's the same logic that took kale from garnish you throw away to superfood. Gerald is the first one to try this burger.
It's Integrity Burger. Go ahead, try it. Well?
And let's just say it goes as can be expected.
This tastes like shit.
Which only makes Randy more excited. That's the point South Park is trying to make. It tastes like shit. But because there's sustainable, environmental, and ethical issues involved, people suddenly start to like it. Just like in real life, companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods are praised for engineering plant-based patties that mimic beef. This brings us to a debate that's been around since 1869. Butters. And no, I don't mean the character. Many people, like my parents, have swapped out their traditional butter for plant-based spreads, thinking they're making a healthier choice. But is that really the case? Let's break it down. Butter, as you know, is a dairy product, primarily made from cow's milk. It's rich in saturated fats, which has given it a bad rap due to its association with high cholesterol and increased risk of heart disease. But before we start demonizing butter, it's worth mentioning that not all saturated fats are inherently bad. In fact, butter contains buric acid, a type of fat that can actually support digestion, reduce inflammation, and even help maintain a healthy weight. Plus, butter is packed with fat-soluble vitamins like A and E, which are crucial for our skin, immune system, and overall health. Meanwhile, plant-based butter alternatives claim to be the healthier option because they contain less saturated fats and fewer calories. However, this doesn't tell the whole story. While it's true that these products might have lower saturated fat content, they're still loaded with highly processed ingredients. The process of making plant-based butter involves solidifying vegetable oils, which can create trans fats. Trans fats are notorious for raising LDL levels and increasing the risk of heart disease, even more than saturated fats. Additionally, plant-based spreads are often packed with artificial flavorings, colorings, and preservatives to mimic the taste and texture of real butter. So, while they may seem like the healthier option on the surface, you're actually consuming a product that's more akin to science experiment than food. So how are these sustainable foods made? It's worth noting that most people wouldn't even know the nitty-gritty details, much like how we don't really want to talk about how hot dogs are made. Let's just say that Impossible Burgers are not created in some picturesque vegan garden. No, they come from laboratories filled with scientists who probably have a side gig working for NASA. These lab-grown patties undergo extensive processing, using ingredients like soy protein, pea protein, and a dash of magic. I'll put the ingredients of a Beyond Burger up on the screen for you here. That's 18 ingredients, including a lot of extracts that make them supposedly healthy, to the point that pro-vegan websites even call it heavily processed, but not ultra-processed. In processed. In Europe, these plant-based alternatives are known for having a lot of E numbers, as they are called. E numbers are basically codes for substances that have been approved to use as food additives. There are some crazy ones out here like E120, which is pressed beetles. They use that to add red color to food. You're eating crushed beetles and it's been approved by the government. Think of that for a second. Or E904, which is bug poop, used to create a nice shine on apples and pears to make them more appetizing. Another funny one which isn't actually an E number, but an aroma called castoreum, which is made from the anus glands of a beaver to enhanced raspberry and vanilla flavoring. It's just less nowadays because of how cost prohibitive it is, but chances are you've enjoyed eating beaver glands. Anyways, back to the plant-based foods. Let's not forget the secret ingredient, the heme, which is supposed to replicate the flavor of meat. The irony? People are pushing to replace the humble cow with a high-tech imitation that requires massive machinery, a hefty carbon footprint, and more processing than your average McDonald's burger. So while folks preach about saving the environment, are they really just swapping one form of corporate greed for another? We'll get into the environmental impact later, but for now, let's get back to Randy.
Plant-based burgers for sale!
Randy has opened his own burger stand across from the Burger King and is now getting all the people involved.
This is seriously as good or better than a real hamburger.
He even wants a couple more to take to work. The people seem to love it, mainly because Randy's burger also has a little bit of that devil's grass in them, but who cares? It gives people the munchies, making them crave even more burgers. Meanwhile, there's an uproar happening at the school where the PC principal is addressing the issue he's facing, as the kids kept complaining about more and more sustainable foods with the school lunches. Luckily, he's found a compromise. He found a goo man, who's a parody straight out of the movie There Will Be Blood. The man comes with big promises during his speech and tells the school he's able to produce goo that can be made into anything. It can even be made into tacos and hot dogs, which I'm unsure would be a substance I would ever want to put in my mouth. But anyway, it's perfect for the situation. He even adds the cherry on top.
And I promise you that none of your students will know the difference.
And guess who's the first to dig in?
Lunchtime!
While the whole school, especially Butters, is anxious that Cartman might notice it's not real meat, their fear quickly becomes reality. Cartman asks,
These tacos look different. What kind are they?
They're incredible beef tacos.
which, as we already know, are made out of goo. But Eric does not know that.
Oh, incredible beef tacos. That sounds nice.
Eric sits down, has a bite, and to the delight of everyone, he doesn't notice anything off.
Oh, thank God, it worked.
The victory is short-lived, as Butters' conscience soons get the better of him.
I just hate lying to you.
After which, Butters confesses to Eric.
It's our lunches, Eric. It's incredible meat.
With this new revelation, we cut to the Goo Man, delivering a monologue straight out of a corporate seminar. He explains that what he serves in the school cafeteria is a synthetically modulated plant protein. He's got a plan to make sure he gets his goo in all the stadiums, fast food restaurants, and places wherever they serve shitty food. We get to see his full production process. It's all made in a lab using huge industrial machines and transported through pipelines so that it can be eaten by people who eat crappy food anyways. After hearing this, Eric takes action,
I need to have a word with the students at my school.
scaring Butters in the meantime. It's then that we see Eric deliver a heartfelt speech about the food in the school cafeteria.
It's me who owes all you guys an apology.
It turns out Eric was scared to death of everyone trying to force him to eat healthy. But after seeing how the goo is made with tons of salt, processed in a factory, it was produced exactly like all his favorite foods. All he wanted was to be able to eat garbage every day, which he definitely is able to now. And if it's ethical and sustainable, well, he's fine with that too. Now, before ending today's episode, there's two more subjects I promised to touch on. The first being the environmentalism surrounding plant-based alternatives. As we see in the episode, Randy delivers a speech at the South Park Community Center now that he's created a plant-based burger.
It takes 13 pounds of grain to produce just 1 pound of animal meat.
He told the people he didn't just do it out of the goodness of his heart for animals, but also the environment. He also claims meat production is wasteful and causes enormous amounts of pollution. Hopping on the vegan diet would be more effective than driving a greener car to fight against climate change. So how much of this is actually true? Well, as far as I could find, all the statements South Park makes reflect genuine concerns and claims that have some basis in scientific studies. Meat production, especially beef, has a significant environmental impact due to deforestation, methane emissions from cattle, and water usage. According to a study by the UN FAO, livestock is responsible for approximately 14.5% of global greenhouse gas emissions, making it a major contributor to climate change. Besides that, various studies have shown that reducing red meat consumption or adopting a plant-based diet can substantially lower an individual's carbon footprint. A 2018 study published in Science found that a vegan diet could reduce food-related emissions by up to 73%. But hey, it's not all green pastures and clean consciences. Some critics argue that certain plant-based meats aren't as eco-friendly as they seem. Sure, they don't moo, but they still need a lot of energy to produce, and sourcing ingredients like soy or pea protein can involve long supply chains and even deforestation in some cases. So it's kind of like switching from gas-guzzling trucks to electric cars. Better, but it's also not perfect. And don't even get me started on the packaging. That should be our next step as a society, to clear a lot more of the microplastics out of our diet. Health-wise, many studies suggest that a balanced plant-based diet can offer numerous benefits, such as lower risk of heart disease, hypertension, and type 2 diabetes. However, a complete plant-based diet needs to be well planned to ensure all necessary nutrients like vitamin B12, iron, and omega-3 fatty acids are included. From an ethical standpoint, reducing meat consumption aligns with animal welfare concerns, as factory farming practices have been widely criticized, which is also one of the reasons why the girls in the South Park cafeteria want more sustainable food. So would the solution to climate change and more sustainability be for everyone to switch to a plant-based diet? Not really, which South Park lampoons will bring a lot of other problems with it. With Tigritty Burger flourishing and everyone loving the plant-based meat, it's created a huge problem for the local meat industry. Cattle ranchers are out of business, and one rancher decides to bring his problem directly to Randy's doorstep. Now Randy's got a herd of cows, and they're not just wandering around peacefully, they're crapping everywhere, chewing up his weed crops, and generally making a mess of things. So what's Randy's solution? Well, it's the only one he knows. Gets high and solve the problem by taking things into their own hands, resulting in a scene that's both disturbing and weirdly surreal, even for South Park standards. The world would also be in big trouble if everyone stopped consuming meat tomorrow. It would end up upending economies, leaving people jobless and threatening food security in places that don't have many nutritional alternatives. So it's best to switch slowly, not like they do in South Park. So what's the big takeaway here? Is going vegan or switching to a plant-based diet really going to save the planet or make us healthier? Well, South Park doesn't give you a straight answer. Instead, it satirizes how companies will latch onto any trend and twist it to fit their own profits. Whether it's meat, goo, or even a buzzword-filled burger from Tigritty Farms, the end goal is the same: convince you to buy it no matter what. The real question is, do these alternatives actually make a difference? Or are they just the same junk, rebranded for a new audience? Randy doesn't care, as long as he's making money. The Goo Man says he's a vegetarian and would like to turn everybody into vegetarians as well. It's a different morality compared to Randy, who is only motivated by money. If he's actually doing that out of his heart because he is a true believer his product is better for the world, it can create an urge for people to support him in his vision. And finally, if Cartman can still eat his usual slop, even if it's disguised as plant-based, then he's happy to call it a net gain. Like South Park shows us, let's not pretend that swapping a double bacon cheeseburger for an incredible beef taco is suddenly make you the picture of health. If you look at fast food plant-based variants, you'll see they're still packed with a bunch of additives, sodium, and other processed stuff. So in the end, it's still junk food. It's all about balance. That doesn't mean you have to go full-on vegan and start meditating in the grocery store's produce section. I would advise you to go to your local beekeeper for raw honey and go to your local butcher for the healthiest meat. You might end up paying a little more than you would in the grocery store, but you would be supporting your locals and enjoying organic food with less preservatives involved. And finally, try swapping out your meat for a plant-based variant every now and then. Who knows, you might actually like it, and it might make a difference, not for just the planet, but for your own health. Plus, you'll have a fun time saying incredible beef at your next barbecue and watching people's faces as they wonder what the hell you're talking about. Now, for a personal take. If you ask me, I'm a fan of keeping things as close to nature as possible. That means sticking with organic, grass-fed beef straight from the farmer. None of that synthetically modulated stuff, whether it's meat or plant-based. And when it comes to plant-based foods, I'd rather munch on actual vegetables than something that's been processed and pressed into a patty. But here's the catch. Eating organic or grass-fed, it's expensive. Nowadays, you need a pretty hefty paycheck to just eat clean, natural food. It's a real challenge for a lot of people. And that's probably why so many folks end up going for the cheaper processed options, whether it's meat or goo.